He never forced me. That's the part I need you to understand before anything else. If you remember nothing else from what I'm about to tell you, remember this. Park Ji-woon never raised his voice, never grabbed my wrist, never issued a single command in all the months I knew him. There were no ultimatums, no threats, no moments where I felt physically afraid or explicitly controlled. He just knew exactly what to say, every single time, the right words, the perfect tone, the precise amount of concern in his dark, attentive eyes to make me believe truly, deeply believe that he was helping me, guiding me, revealing to me the best version of myself that I had somehow been unable to see on my own. And before I realized what was happening before, I even noticed the walls closing in. I wasn't making my own choices anymore. I met Park Ji-woon on a Sunday afternoon in early spring. The cherry blossoms were just beginning to bloom, painting the city in soft shades of pink and white that made everything feel fragile and temporary and precious. My mother was hosting one of her famous luncheons, the kind where important people gathered to eat delicate food and conduct the real business of our world beneath layers of polite conversation. I was there because she had asked me to attend, and I had long since learned that refusing my mother's requests was more exhausting than simply agreeing. I was 23 years old, soft-spoken, the kind of Omega that people described as sweet when they couldn't think of anything more interesting to say. I had spent my entire life trying to become someone worth keeping, and I still wasn't sure I had succeeded. The luncheon was in full swing when I first noticed him. He was standing near the garden terrace, a glass of white wine in his hand that he never seemed to actually drink. He held it the way some people hold accessories, not because they want them, but because they complete the picture. He was tall. That was the first thing I registered. Tall and composed in a way that seemed almost unnatural, like every muscle in his body had been trained to stillness. His suit was charcoal gray, perfectly fitted, but not flashy, the kind of quiet elegance that costs more than anything loud. His hair was dark, swept back from a face that was handsome without being beautiful, sharp jaw, straight nose, eyes that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Everything about him whispered control. I didn't have the vocabulary for it then, but I felt it. A gravitational pull toward his stillness, like he was the center of the room and everyone else was just orbiting. When his eyes found mine across the crowd, I felt something shift in my chest. Not a spark. That would have been too dramatic, too romantic, too much like the stories I had grown up reading about fated mates and instant connection. This was quieting, deeper. It felt like recognition, like he had been looking for someone exactly like me, someone soft, someone uncertain, someone waiting to be shaped, and had finally found what he was searching for. He approached slowly, not hesitantly. Nothing about Park Ji-woon was ever hesitant, but deliberately. The way someone moves when they know they don't need to rush because the outcome is already certain. Lee Hyun, my name in his mouth. Not a question, a statement, like he was confirming something he already knew. I swallowed. My throat felt dry. Yes, I'm sorry. Have we? No, a slight curve of his lips. Not quite a smile. But I've heard about you. Your mother speaks highly of your gentleness. Gentleness. The word should have been a compliment. In our world, gentle Omegas were valued. Gentle meant agreeable. Gentle meant easy. Gentle meant you wouldn't cause problems, or make demands, or ask for more than you were given. But something about the way he said it made it sound like a condition, a quality to be evaluated, a characteristic he was filing away for future reference. Thank you, I said, because I didn't know what else to say. I never knew what to say in these situations. That was part of my problem, was always searching for the right words, the perfect response, the thing that would make people look at me and think, yes, this one is worth keeping. You seem nervous. His observation was casual, gentle, but it landed like he had seen straight through me. I forced a small laugh. Large gatherings aren't really mine. You don't need to explain. He cut me off, but not harshly, softly, like he was saving me from the embarrassment of stumbling through an explanation that wasn't necessary. Like he already understood everything about me and didn't need me to justify my existence. I understand, he continued. His voice was low, meant only for me. These events can be overwhelming for someone like you. Someone like you. The phrase should have stung. It should have felt condescending or dismissive, or at least worthy of examination. Instead, it felt like being seen, like he had looked at me, really looked, and immediately understood something fundamental about who I was, something I had always known about myself, but had never been able to articulate. I was overwhelmed. I was always overwhelmed. The world was too loud, too bright, too demanding for someone like me. I had spent my whole life pretending I could handle it, forcing myself to smile and nod and perform normalcy while inside I was drowning. And here was this stranger, this composed, magnetic alpha, looking at me like he could see all of it, like he didn't just tolerate my softness, he recognized it, valued it, wanted to protect it. That was the first trap. Not cruelty disguised as kindness. Something more insidious. Something that felt exactly like care. "I'm Park Ji-woon," he said. And finally, the almost smile became real. Just slightly. Just enough to warm his features. "Would you like to take a walk in the garden? It's quieter there. You might find it easier to breathe." I nodded before I could think about it. My omega instincts, always so desperate for approval, for protection, for someone to take the weight of the world off my shoulders, reached toward him like flowers toward sunlight. He offered his arm. I took it. And just like that, I began to disappear. The second time I saw Park Ji-woon, I was 12 minutes late. Not terribly late. Not unforgivably late. But late enough that I had rushed from my apartment with my hair still damp from a hasty shower, forgotten to check the weather forecast, and arrived at the cafe looking like I had barely survived a small natural disaster. Rain dripped from my hair. My collar was wrinkled and damp. My cheeks were flushed from exertion and embarrassment, and I could feel the eyes of other patrons flickering toward me, the omega who couldn't even arrive on time for a simple coffee date. Ji-woon was already seated, of course. He rose when I approached, and his expression didn't change. No annoyance, no disappointment, just that same calm, evaluative gaze that I was beginning to recognize. "You rushed," he said. His voice wasn't accusatory, it was observational, like he was noting a fact about the weather. "The rain, I didn't expect. The forecast said it would hold until evening, and I thought I had more time. And then the bus was delayed, and here." He reached out. I stopped breathing. His fingers found my collar, the damp, wrinkled collar I had been tugging at uselessly since I left my apartment. He adjusted the fabric with slow, deliberate movements, smoothing the creases, straightening the line, tucking the edges into place with a precision that felt almost ceremonial. His knuckles brushed my throat. Once, briefly. Barely a touch at all, but my omega instincts hummed, a low, warm vibration that spread from the point of contact through my entire body. I hadn't been touched like this in, I couldn't remember how long. Not grabbed, not claimed, just attended to, cared for in a small, specific way that no one had ever bothered with before. "You'd look better if you paid attention to details like this." The words landed softly, not harsh, not insulting, just, "Suri, none." He was stating an obvious fact about the world that I had somehow missed. "You'd look better if," not "you look bad," not "you're a mess." Just a simple, helpful observation about how I could improve, how I could be better, how I could become the version of myself that deserved to stand beside someone like him. I should have bristled. I should have felt criticized. Any reasonable person would have heard those words and recognized them for what they were: a correction, a judgment, a small but unmistakable assertion of superiority. Instead, I felt something else entirely. He notices me, even the small things. No one had ever noticed the small things about me. I was the kind of omega people overlooked: pleasant enough, agreeable enough, useful enough to keep around, but not memorable, not special, not the kind of person anyone would cross a room for or wait in the rain for or remember the details about. I had spent my whole life being someone's second choice, someone's convenient option, someone's almost, the friend who was always available but never prioritized, the date who was nice enough but not exciting, the omega who would do in a pinch but wasn't worth pursuing. And here was Park Ji-woon, this compose, magnetic, clearly important, Alpha, noticing my collar, noticing that I had rushed, noticing the small, specific details of my existence that everyone else had always glossed over. He noticed me. Thank you, I whispered. And I meant it. I meant it with every fiber of my being. He smiled. That same slight, controlled curve of his mouth that I was learning to watch for. A reward. A signal that I had done something right. Sit. He gestured to the chair across from him. I ordered for you. I hope you don't mind. I remembered you mentioned liking jasmine tea last time. He remembered. The thought bloomed in my chest like a flower opening to the sun. He remembered. We had spoken for perhaps 20 minutes at my mother's luncheon, surrounded by dozens of other people. And in that brief conversation I had mentioned casually, in passing, not expecting anyone to retain it, that I preferred jasmine tea. And he had remembered. I sat. I wrapped my hands around the warm ceramic cup. I inhaled the delicate floral scent and felt something inside me begin to soften, to open, to trust. That was the second trap, and I walked into it with my eyes wide open, grateful for the cage because it felt so much like home. The suggestions started so gradually that I didn't recognize them as suggestions at all. At first, they were just observations, neutral comments offered in that same calm, certain tone he used for everything. The tone of someone who was simply stating facts about the world, facts I had somehow missed, facts he was generously sharing with me. That color doesn't suit you. We were in my apartment. He had come to pick me up for dinner, and I had answered the door wearing my favorite sweater, a bright, cheerful blue that I had bought myself for my last birthday because it made me feel visible, noticeable, like someone who deserved to be seen. He said the words without malice, without criticism, just that same quiet certainty I was growing accustomed to. You have a warmer complexion, he continued. Something softer would complement it better. Beige, perhaps, or a gentle cream. Those colors would make you look more yourself. More yourself. The phrase hooked into me and held fast. He wasn't telling me I looked bad. He was telling me I could look better, more authentic, more like the person I was meant to be. I looked down at the blue sweater. I had loved it when I bought it. I had stood in the store for 20 minutes, turning it over in my hands, trying to decide if I deserved something so bright, so attention-grabbing. I had finally purchased it as an act of rebellion against my own invisibility. But maybe Jawoon was right. Maybe blue was too harsh for my skin tone. Maybe I had been choosing clothes that didn't actually flatter me, trying too hard to be noticed, when I should have been focusing on being harmonious. I changed into a cream-colored blouse before we left. It was softer, quiet, more subdued. Much better, Jawoon said, when I emerged. His voice warmed by a fraction. His eyes lingered on me a moment longer than usual. You look more like yourself. More like yourself. I held on to those words like a gift. He saw me. He understood who I really was better than I understood myself, apparently. He wasn't changing me. He was revealing me, helping me become the person I had always been meant to be. I wore beige the next time I saw him, and the time after that, and the time after that. Within a month, the blue sweater was at the back of my closet, buried beneath layers of soft neutrals and warm pastels. I didn't miss it. Not really. Jawoon was right, those colors suited me better, made me look more elegant, more composed, more like someone who deserved to stand beside an alpha like him. You don't have to laugh that loudly. The words came after a dinner party with his colleagues. I had been nervous all evening meeting the people he worked with, wanting desperately to make a good impression, to prove that I was worthy of being on his arm. I had laughed at their jokes, maybe too loudly, maybe too eagerly. I had been trying so hard to seem at ease, to seem fun, to seem like someone worth keeping around. We were in his car, driving back to my apartment. The city lights slid past the windows in streaks of gold and white. Your natural laugh is lovely, he continued. His hand rested on my knee, warm, grounding, possessive in a way that made my omega instincts purr. The forced one sounds, trying. You don't need to perform for anyone, Hyun. Just be yourself. Just be yourself. The irony of those words would occur to me much, much later. In the moment, I felt only gratitude. He was looking out for me, protecting me from my own anxious tendencies, helping me see that I didn't need to try so hard. I hadn't realized I was forcing anything, But when I thought back to the dinner party, replaying my own laughter in my mind, maybe I had been a little loud. Maybe I had been trying too hard to seem at ease when I should have just been at ease. The next time we were at a social gathering, I caught myself before I laughed, modulated the volume, kept it soft, contained, natural. Jawoon squeezed my hand under the table. His thumb traced a small circle on my palm. He didn't say anything he didn't have to. The warmth of his approval spread through my chest like honey. Good. The word wasn't spoken aloud, but I felt it anyway. A reward I hadn't known I was craving. A signal that I was becoming exactly what he wanted me to be. Days turned into weeks. Weeks turned into months. And somewhere in that slow, gentle passage of time, something shifted. I didn't notice it happening. That was the insidious part. If Jawoon had grabbed me and shaken me and demanded I change, I would have recognized the abuse for what it was. I would have fought back. I would have run. But he never demanded anything. He just suggested, observed, offered his thoughts in that calm, certain tone that made everything sound reasonable, even helpful, even loving. Let me handle the conversation. You'll feel more comfortable. You don't need to have an opinion on everything. It's exhausting for you. That outfit is fine, but the other one makes you look more elegant. I ordered for you. I know what you like. Each suggestion was small, insignificant, the kind of thing any attentive partner might say. And every time I followed his guidance, he rewarded me. A softer tone, a rare, approving look. His hand on my lower back, warm and possessive. The subtle closeness of his body as we walked through rooms together. He likes me more when I listen, so I kept listening. I started checking his expression before I spoke. It became automatic. Unconscious. A quick glance barely, a flicker of my eyes to read the tiny cues that would tell me if my words would please him. A slight relaxation around his eyes meant good. A subtle tightening of his jaw meant stop. The almost imperceptible shift of his mouth meant try again. I got very good at reading him. It became a survival skill. Though I wouldn't have called it that at the time. I would have called it being attentive, being a good partner, learning how to make him happy. I started choosing clothes based on what I knew he preferred. Not because he asked me to. Not because he would be angry if I didn't. Just because. His preferences made sense. He had better taste than I did. He understood what looked good on me, what suited my complexion, what presented the right image to the world. I was just being smart, being practical, being the kind of Omega who could adapt to her alpha's needs. I started holding back my natural reactions. The too loud laugh, the too bright enthusiasm, the too muchness of my personality that I had never realized was too much until Jawoon showed me a quieter, more acceptable version of myself. He never told me I was too much. He never had to. I learned to read his silences, his subtle withdrawals, the way he would go just slightly distant when I was being too enthusiastic about something, and I learned to adjust, to soften, to become smaller, because every time I got it right, every time I anticipated his preference, smoothed my edges, became a little more of what he wanted, he rewarded me. A softer tone when he said my name, Hyuna, a rare, approving look that made my Omega instincts sing. His hand on my lower back as we walked through a room full of people who could see that I belong to him. He likes me more when I listen. He loves me more when I'm good. I just need to do better, be better, become exactly what he needs. Love became something to earn, and I was so good at earning it. There were moments, brief, flickering moments when something felt wrong. I would catch my reflection in a shop window and not quite recognize the person. Looking back, she was beautiful, elegant, poised, dressed in soft beige tones that complemented her warm complexion. She looked like someone who belonged beside an alpha like Park Jawoon, someone worthy of his attention. But her eyes, there was something about her eyes, a blankness, a stillness, a sense that she was waiting for someone else to tell her what to feel. I would blink and the moment would pass. I would tell myself I was being dramatic. Jawoon was good to me. He took care of me. He noticed the small things. He remembered that I liked jasmine tea. He adjusted my collar when it was wrinkled. He helped me become the best version of myself. What more could I possibly want? Once, I tried to choose a restaurant for our date night. Jawoon always chose. It was easier that way. He knew the best places, understood the social landscape, could navigate the unspoken hierarchies of our world in ways I never could. I had never minded. Choosing was stressful. Choosing meant responsibility. Choosing meant the possibility of being wrong. But that week, I had read about a new place. A small, intimate restaurant tucked away in a neighborhood I used to love before I met him. The kind of place that served comfort food instead of cuisine. That had mismatched chairs and handwritten menus, and no pretension whatsoever. I mentioned it hesitantly, testing, watching his face for cues. His expression didn't change, but something in his eyes, a slight cooling, a subtle withdrawal made my stomach clench. If that's what you want, he said. His voice was perfectly neutral, perfectly pleasant. I made a reservation at Sulawan, but we can cancel. Sulawan, the most exclusive restaurant in the city. A reservation there was impossible to get. I knew he must have called in significant favors to secure it. And I was suggesting we go to some neighborhood cafe with mismatched chairs. No, I said quickly. Too quickly. Sulawan sounds perfect. It was just a thought. He smiled, that slight, controlled curve of his mouth, approval returning to his eyes, like the sun emerging from behind clouds. Good. I think you'll love it. The chef trained in Lion. I'm sure I will. We went to Sulawan. It was exquisite. Every bite was perfect. Every detail was immaculate. I smiled and nodded and said all the right things. And I didn't think about the little restaurant with the mismatched chairs again. The first real crack came on an ordinary Tuesday. We were at a small gathering, one of Jaewoon's professional acquaintances. A dinner party with perhaps a dozen people. I was seated beside him, as I always was, my hand resting on his knee under the table. A comfortable position, a familiar one, the kind of quiet intimacy that had become the foundation of our relationship. I had spent the afternoon getting ready, choosing the right outfit, a soft cream blouse that, Jawoon had once said, made me look elegant. Practicing my smile in the mirror until it looked natural, reminding myself to laugh softly, to speak only when spoken to let Jawoon handle the conversations. I was good at this now. I had been practicing for months. The dinner was pleasant. The food was excellent. I smiled and nodded and existed in the background exactly as I was supposed to. And then someone turned to me. She was a beta woman with sharp eyes and an easy smile. I had seen her at previous gatherings. She worked in urban development, I thought. Or maybe it was finance. I couldn't quite remember. I had stopped paying attention to details like that. Jawoon handled the important information. What do you think, she asked, about the new development in the Eastern District? I've been following it for months, and I'd love to hear your perspective. A simple question, normal, harmless, the kind of question people asked at dinner parties to keep conversation flowing. I opened my mouth, and nothing came out. Not because I didn't understand the topic. I did, or I had once. I remembered reading about the Eastern District development weeks ago. I remembered having thoughts about it, opinions. I had even started to mention something to Jawoon, but he had gently steered the conversation elsewhere, and I had let him. But now, sitting at this dinner table, with this woman looking at me expectantly, I couldn't find a single thought that belonged to me. My mind was blank, completely, terrifyingly blank. What did I think? What did I feel? What was my perspective on anything at all? I didn't know. I couldn't remember. Every opinion I had ever had seemed to have been replaced by Jaewoon's voice. Jaewoon's preferences. Jaewoon's carefully curated version of who I should be. The silence stretched. 1 second. 2 seconds. 3. The woman's smile began to falter. Confusion flickered in her eyes. I could feel other gazes turning toward us, sensing something wrong, something off about the Omega who couldn't answer a simple question. Instinctively, automatically, I looked at Jawoon. He was already turning, smooth, effortless, like he had been waiting for this moment, like he knew I would need him to step in, like my dependence on him was so complete that it was simply expected. He and I were just discussing this the other day, he said, his voice warm and confident. We feel the development is promising, but the infrastructure concerns need to be addressed before it moves forward. The transportation links simply aren't adequate for the projected population density. The woman nodded. The conversation moved on. Someone else picked up the thread. offering their own perspective. No one noticed anything unusual, except me. I sat there, my hand still resting on Jae-woon's knee, under the table, my face still arranged in a pleasant, vacant expression, and I felt something crack open inside my chest. When did I stop having my own answers? The question echoed through me, reverberating against the hollow spaces where my thoughts used to live. I tried to remember the last time I had expressed an opinion without first checking his face. The last time I had made a decision without wondering what he would think. The last time I had known, clearly and certainly, what I wanted. I couldn't. Flashbacks hit me in waves. Not dramatic revelations, just small, devastating memories. The blue sweater at the back of my closet. The little restaurant with the mismatched chairs. The laughter I had learned to modulate. The opinions I had learned to swallow. The person I had been before. Park Ji-woon, the person who liked bright colors and laughed too loudly and had thoughts about things like urban development. That person was gone, erased, replaced by this quiet, agreeable, perfect Omega who couldn't even answer a simple question at a dinner party. He didn't force me, I gave myself away, piece by piece. That night, Ji-woon walked me to my door as he always did. His hand cupped my cheek, gentle, warm. His thumb traced the line of my jaw, and my Omega instincts leaned into his touch like a flower turning toward the sun. I couldn't help it. I had been conditioned to crave his approval like a drug, and he gave it so rarely, so precisely, that every dose felt precious. "You were wonderful tonight," he said. His voice was soft, intimate. The voice he used only for me. "You're becoming exactly who you're meant to be." I looked up at him, at this alpha, who had reshaped me so completely that I no longer recognized myself. At this man, who had taken my uncertainty, my softness, my desperate need to be loved, and molded it into something he could use. And I felt grateful. That was the worst part. Even now, even after the dinner party, even after realizing I had no thoughts of my own left, I still felt grateful, because he had chosen me, because he had seen something in me worth cultivating, because without him, I would still be that anxious, overlooked Omega, who didn't know how to dress or speak or exist in the world. He had made me better, hadn't he? "Thank you," I whispered. The words came automatically. I had said them so many times they required no thought. He kissed my forehead, soft, chaste, perfect. "Get some rest. I'll call you tomorrow." He left. I stood in my doorway until his car disappeared around the corner. The taillights faded into the darkness like two red eyes closing. Then I closed the door, locked it, and walked slowly, deliberately, to my bedroom. I stopped in front of the mirror. The person looking back at me was beautiful. That was the terrible, undeniable truth. She was beautiful and poised, and perfectly dressed in soft beige tones that complemented her warm complexion. Her hair was styled simply, elegantly. Her makeup was subtle, enhancing rather than transforming. She looked like someone who belonged beside Park Ji-woon, someone worthy of his attention, someone he had carefully, lovingly crafted. But her eyes were empty. I raised my hand, touched the glass, watched my reflection do the same. Her fingers met mine through the cold barrier, and I searched her face for any sign of the person I used to be. Nothing, just this hollow, perfect stranger. If I stopped listening to him, my voice came out small, smaller than I wanted, smaller than I had let myself sound in months. "What's left of me?" The reflection didn't answer. She just stared back at me with those empty eyes. This perfect Omega I had always wanted to become. This ideal version of myself that I had sacrificed everything to create. And I realized, with a cold, creeping horror, that I had no idea who I was without him. Every preference, every opinion, every small, specific detail that makes a person themselves, all of it had been replaced by Ji-woon, by his suggestions, by his approvals and disapprovals, by the subtle, loving guidance that had erased me so completely. I hadn't even noticed I was disappearing. I stood at the mirror for a long time. The city hummed outside my window. The night stretched on, indifferent to the quiet devastation happening in my small apartment. When I finally turned away, the reflection stayed behind, watching, waiting, a ghost of the person I used to be, or maybe just maybe the first flicker of the person I would have to become. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on my bedroom floor, surrounded by the evidence of my erasure. The clothes in my closet, all soft neutrals, all chosen by his preferences. The books on my shelf, titles he had recommended, genres he approved of. The phone in my hand, filled with messages where I agreed with him, thanked him, asked for his guidance. I opened my contacts, scrolled through names I hadn't spoken to in months, friends I had drifted away from because Jawoon thought they were a bit much, or not a good influence. Family members whose calls I had stopped answering because Jawoon said they didn't understand me the way he did. When had I become so isolated, so dependent, so completely, terrifyingly his? The answer was, slowly, one small suggestion at a time, one approving look, one subtle withdrawal, one moment of choosing his comfort over my own. I thought about leaving. The word itself felt foreign, impossible. Leave Park Jawoon? Leave the alpha who had chosen me, shaped me, made me into someone worth being. Leave the only person who had ever truly seen me. But he hadn't seen me. That was the realization that finally broke through the fog. He had seen potential, raw material, a soft, uncertain Omega who could be molded into whatever shape he desired. He had never seen me. Because I had never shown him, I had been too busy becoming what he wanted to ever let him see who I really was. And now, I wasn't sure that person even existed anymore. I stood up, walked back to the mirror, faced the stranger, looking back at me. If I stopped listening to him, my voice was stronger this time, still quiet, but with something underneath. Something that might have been the first spark of a fire I thought had gone out. What's left of me? The reflection stared back, silent, waiting. But this time, it didn't look away. This time, I made a decision. I didn't know who I was without Park Jawoon. I didn't know what I liked or what I thought or what I wanted from my own life. I had given all of that away, piece by piece, until there was nothing left but the hollow shell of his perfect Omega. But shells can be filled, identities can be rebuilt, and I was still breathing, still here, still capable of choosing something different. I didn't know what came next. I didn't know how to take back what I had given away. I didn't even know if it was possible to recover a self that had been so thoroughly erased. But I knew one thing with absolute certainty. I couldn't keep disappearing. I wouldn't.